Today we're talking about The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. This is a fantasy book that was published by Orbit. It came out in 2025. I'm going to give you a quick overview, vibe check. I'll give you 3 specific things I liked, and then I'll give you a couple comp titles at the end. So here is the deal. The book is about this kingdom where the way that they transfer power is they have a tournament of champions, basically. And so the current reign has come to an end. We've got the 7 challengers that have come to this capital city. They're going to do, these various trials in order to become the next emperor. Our hero is a scholar of the Raven clan. I forget what house, Raven House. And when the representative of the Raven House dies mysteriously, she is assigned to investigate the murder, and then she is also assigned to take her place. And so she has to compete in the trials to potentially become the next emperor. So we've got a murder mystery plus this kind of political intrigue fight tournament thing happening. It's a lot going on, but it's handled very, very well. So vibe check on this. So the way I first heard about this book is one of my booksellers at the store came to me and said, "Hey, I'm reading a fantasy book. I think you'll like it because it has footnotes." And they know me so well. I love a good footnote. So when I had this for a book club at my store, a couple people complained about the footnotes. They're like, "Why are there footnotes? This is lame." And I had to vehemently defend the footnotes because footnotes are great. More people should use them. Overall, I think it was a book that had a lot of buzz, and so I was kind of worried going in that it wasn't going to live up to it, and it lived up to it. It really worked for me. Normally, I start my book club books like a week in advance, maybe a couple days before my next book club, and this one I started a full month ahead because it's kind of a big book, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to need time to read it, and I'm glad I started it ahead of time, but I didn't really need to because I tore through it so fast. But it was nice that I did because I had it on hand when I was at Children's Institute in Chicago, and it was a nice conversation started with a lot of other booksellers there who had read it and were like, "Oh, you're reading The Raven Scholar? Awesome, you gotta email me about it and tell me what you think later." So that was really fun to have this as my kind of walking around book, even though it was large and in charge. The book itself, I think it's got this just kind of it's got a great cast of characters. It's got superbly unique world building. That's the way that I phrased it. Superbly unique world building, and that it really kind of it picks and chooses from a lot of kind of familiar things, but then mashes them up in a way that's different. So the familiar but strange is always a hit, especially in kind of the sci-fi realm. And then the last thing is it's got really stellar prose. I loved the writing in this book. So that's kind of the big takeaways from it, I guess, for me, is that I loved the writing, I loved the world building, and I was impressed by the way that Hodgson was able to balance this gluttonous wealth of cool ideas and still tell a streamlined story that didn't feel bloated. It's a 600-page book, so sometimes that can be pretty bloated. But this one, it felt like it needed those 600 pages and it told the story that it needed to tell. And yes, it is book 1 of a trilogy, so there's going to be more, but the way that all of those ideas, it's the way that I described it at the beginning, it's this kind of political intrigue, murder mystery, fight tournament. It's got 7 books worth of each of these could be their own book. And instead she made them one, and that is a very impressive feat, in my opinion. So the 3 specific things that I really liked about this book. Number 1 is surprise me. I am a bookseller and a writer, so I think a lot about story, and this book dropped me straight out of critical analysis brain and into reader brain, where I was just along for the ride and really enjoying it. And there's so many kind of tropes that are vaguely familiar that you'll see through this book, but you never really know if Hodgson's going to subvert them, if she's going to fulfill them, if she's going to fulfill them kind of sideways. So it always kind of keeps you guessing in a way that I found very rewarding as a fantasy reader who's read a lot. There were so many things I was like, okay, this ended exactly how I thought it was going to, and then there were times where I got very surprised. So I love when a book can do that for me. Number 2, Elevated yet accessible prose. These days, I'm pretty drawn towards books that, like, their prose is as fantastic as the world when it comes to fantasy. I'm really looking for prose that is beautiful in its own right and tells a good story. And I really liked the writing in this book. I thought that it was precise without being flowery. So there were some, like, I had to look up, I think, 2 words in this. I can't remember what they were now, but there were 2 times where I had to look up words because it was an unusual word. And I like that kind of precision, whereas, like, once I looked it up, I was like, that is exactly the right word that you needed for this moment. I'm glad that you used it and made me have to do the work to go and learn what that word was. So I always like that. And then the way that the author frames the story is also very fun. She uses I would say, a clever mix of POs she uses POs. You can tell I'm thinking about purchase orders for my work. A clever mix of POVs in order to frame the story, and it really elevates it. Again, I'm going to say that word a lot, elevate, I guess, but it really does make a difference in the way that the point of views kind of go in and out. It kind of cycles from almost like a third person omniscient type of thing into a really tight third person, and then you bounce around through a couple people throughout the story, and it really worked for me. So I was impressed by the level of craft on that. And then the last thing, number 3, is fantasy murder mystery. I love a good genre mashup. I love specifically the fantasy and, like, mystery mashup. I even have written one myself that is a, fantasy hard-boiled detective novel. And what I see a lot of times is there are things that are kind of pitched as being like a mashup of a fantasy murder mystery. And then when you read it, it's basically, it just counts as a murder mystery because there is a dead body that's found and they kind of have to figure out what happened, but it doesn't follow, like, a typical structure for a murder mystery. You don't really have the kind of, like, setup, establishing the suspects, really kind of like getting red herrings and doing all of that stuff. And this does that. And I was very impressed that she was able to, especially, like, the first half of it is very much a, like, straight up murder mystery. Like, she's the detective, she's interviewing suspects, she's doing all that stuff. So I loved the way that it actually fulfilled that promise for me, because it's something I'm always looking for, and I'm always a little disheartened when it doesn't pay off in the way that I want it to. So those are the 3 specific things that I liked about the book. Overall, it was a huge hit for me. I tore through it. I had a really good conversation at my bookstore with our fantasy book club about this book. So for me, the hype paid off. I really liked it. Last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a couple of comp titles. So if you like this book, I would suggest reading A Memory Called Empire by R. Katie Martine for an in-over-their-head bureaucrat solving a murder in a richly imagined capital of an empire. That is my pitch for why you should read A Memory Called Empire. Almost made it through with no cuts, but had to cut for this because I messed it up like 4 times in a row. Anyway, the second comp title is Jade City by Fonda Lee for the world of intrigue, where you forget about magic because the politics are so interesting and the characters are so interesting, and then suddenly things erupt in a big old magic fight, which, that is always what we're looking for. So there you go. That is The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. Read it. It's really good. Let me know what you think of it. And remember, liking things is cool. Spend more time with stuff you like.